Welcome to the Heartification podcast, where I interview people on how art has affected their lives and what it means to them. Art has a very special place in my life. It not only makes me feel happy, but it allows me to make others feel special. This podcast is all about how art has made an impact on others' lives, for all ages, all backgrounds, and all walks of life. You can find more about this podcast guest in my show notes. Without further ado, let's welcome my next guest. She's a media personality and she educates people on health and nutrition. Please welcome my next guest, Gillian Mandich.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for
good.
having me. I'm just so inspired by the work that you're doing, and it's so wonderful. And to me, it's just such a ray of light in the world, and I really celebrate you for that.
Thank you. So the first question I always ask is, how do you define art?
Ooh. So, it's interesting because I used to have a very different view of art than I do now. So when I was growing up, I was always really good at like math and science. And to me, I thought art was like painting and drawing. And then as I got older and I started to tap into my creativity and imagination, I started to realize that like art can really be anything. Art to me is when you use a medium, whether it's paint or words or dance or journaling, whatever it is, to express yourself. To me, art is an expression of who you are. And it's something that I think is such a powerful way to express ourselves, because sometimes when we talk, our words, we're so limited by our words. Like even a word like love, it's hard to actually capture in words how that feels. And so to me, art is an extension of that and sort of takes that and can build on it, because it can allow you to express where words fall short, what our thoughts are, what our feelings are, what our emotions are, how we feel about other people or about our world or anything like that.
Yeah, and there's so many different forms of art, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, even like when I was little, like I just thought art was like, painting, drawing. But
Mm-hmm.
as I got older and got more into the art space, I realized like basically mostly everything is an art. Art is an expression, and anything that where you can express yourself is a form of art.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. And it's such a therapeutic thing in a lot of ways, because it can allow us to express, but it can be a way to connect people and to find common ground and to share things, or even looking at like a dance, for example, where if you might not even speak the same language as somebody, but you can share in an experience and feel connected through art.
Yeah, definitely. And what forms of art do you find when you are educating people?
It's interesting. I find so I always had this story in my head that I was not an artist and that art was not for me because I was more math and science. And then my best friend that I actually met a couple of years ago, he is a painter. He's a very famous artist that lives in LA. And he used to challenge me all the time. And he would say, Gillian, like everybody's an artist. And we just need to tap into that and figure out what that was for me. And I said, nope, no way. I can't draw. I'm not an artist. And then he started giving me drawing activities to do and different like experimental, like even just drawing shapes. And it really, once I sort of put down my walls and the story I told myself that I wasn't an artist, I realized that it's a way to express our creativity. And so I used to have this goal that unless I did something that was really beautiful, then it wasn't good. But I realized that art is more in the expression of it and not necessarily the outcome of it. It's kind of like, I researched happiness, and happiness isn't a destination. It's really a practice. It's something that we work at. And I see art in the same way, where the magic is in the doing, not in necessarily the outcome. The outcome can be this beautiful celebration, but it doesn't have to be. The process of expressing yourself through whatever medium feels good, to me, that's the beauty of art.
Yeah, and it's your emotions that you put into it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, and since you are a happiness researcher, what form of art makes you happy?
So I really I love music. To me, music is beautiful art. And when I work, even if I'm, writing a paper or analyzing data, I like to have beautiful music on that inspires me in the background. So I like to listen to a lot of like piano music, or sort of music that doesn't have words, but it has different sounds. Ludovico Einaudi, this Italian pianist, is one of my favorites to listen to because I find when I have that on, it inspires me and it makes me feel more creative. So I almost put myself in the presence of art to allow me to feel more of that within myself as well. I love like looking at paintings and stuff like that. Not so much a painter myself, but I can appreciate that. And one of the things, my best friend that I was talking about, uh, being friends with him, I've learned the backstory into how much work goes into a painting, from like figuring out the color keys to drawing out different versions of it. Like it's not just like someone takes a piece of paper and starts drawing necessarily. And I've started to appreciate the backstory that goes into the final product of art. And I use that within my own life to remind myself, because especially with social media, we see everybody's bright, shiny moments, right? The final pictures on social media, but we don't see all of the work that's gone into that. Even when you post this podcast, they see the podcast, but they don't see the times you spent emailing and preparing and editing and getting that all ready. And so to me, sometimes I use art as a reminder of that, of the backstory, of all the intentionality and the work that goes into the end product. And it allows me to have an appreciation for the process. And I think that that's a beautiful gift that art has given me, especially recently.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. And what forms of art are you exposed to?
Hmm. So let me think. I am exposed to actually, so I do research part-time at Sick Kids at the Children's Hospital in Toronto. And there, I actually get to sometimes be involved in like finger painting and like sort of really art sort of in that very elementary, fun, playful way. I also have a couple nieces, so we'll do different like color by numbers and things like that. I actually, right here, I think knitting and crafting is art. And I'm actually just learning to knit right now. So I'm teaching myself new art in that form. I've also done scrapbooking over the years. And then more recently now, it's gone online. And I sometimes like to play in Photoshop. Like to me, that's art. And that's taking a photo and, adding text or changing things or cropping things or adding different pictures around. I see that as art as well, like virtual art. But that is really something that has been really fun for me to do as well. I also love music, and I don't play music, but I dance or, listen to it. I find sometimes even when I'm exercising, I see movement as art, even more like sort of more formal, traditional gym movements. If you're squatting or stuff, I still see that as art, because I think art is anything that you bring to life. And when you bring intention and beauty and your own personality and your own flair, then you almost live your life as art. It's not something separate. It's something that's just a part or an extension of who we are and how we can connect with each other.
Yeah, definitely. And is there a particular form of art that you are more drawn to than others?
Mm. I think if I think about for myself, I love photography. I love especially like if I think about art on the walls and things like that. I love nature, in particular photography. And the reason, I love the beauty of Mother Nature, and even just looking at some of the patterns and the shapes and the colors, or even how the colors change throughout the seasons, and you can capture that. I think it's so beautiful. And another piece, when we look in terms of how nature can impact our happiness, there's research that shows that even seeing pictures of nature can have a positive impact on our mood and on our mental well-being. And so even from a research side, I think having pictures of nature around is great. And even uh, my desktop background right now on my phone, on my computer and on my phone, is flowers, because I love seeing nature around me in different forms and the beauty of it. And that to me is one of my favorite.
Yeah, that's amazing. And art also gives you that feeling of happiness and
Hmm. And even when you're making art, a lot of times you go into like what's called a flow state, where you almost get like lost in time. And that is a really beautiful place to be, and to be in it fully absorbed in what you're doing. And art can be a great tool to help you get into a flow state, which can help boost your happiness and it really can have really good benefits for your mental health.
Yeah, definitely. Like sometimes when I'm painting, just everything around me, like I don't even know what's going on. My sister can be like shouting on top of her lungs, and sometimes I won't even know.
What's your favorite type of art?
Well, for me, it's painting.
Mm.
But I also like really admire music, dance, things like that.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And is there any particular artist that you're drawn to?
You know, um, different ones for different reasons. But I've got to say, so my best friend, his name is Justin Bua. He's a painter I was talking about earlier, and his art is very creative. And he almost like, if they're painting a picture, like different parts of the body are distorted into different sizes. And the way he captures light is just like I'm in awe. It really, like, even if he's painting like a cityscape, he painted a commission for someone in Montreal, and we went to an unveiling a couple months ago, and it was of the skyline of Montreal, and it almost looked like a photograph, the way that the light was reflected on the buildings and stuff. And so to me, a lot of the beauty of art is in the really small details and in the lighting. And I just it's my favorite. I think he's just so talented and so gifted in terms of capturing light and emotion. So he's probably my favorite. I'm biased, obviously, but it's really, I love that. And then the other the other artist that I really, really like is Peter Lick. I was talking about the nature stuff earlier, and has some really beautiful, again with the lighting, but nature pictures as well.
Yeah, the lighting of a painting or even photograph can really change your perspective.
It's so true, and actually, one of my favorite art galleries is in Montreal, but they also have a couple different galleries in Toronto. And um, I saw this one picture, and I don't remember the artist, but it was sort of like an accordion. And if you looked from one side, it looked like one picture. And then if you went to the other side and you looked, it had a totally different picture. And even when you walk through galleries, art isn't just, even necessarily things on the wall, which is what I used to think art was. I love and I can appreciate the creativity of all of the different types of art, and really people that start to think outside the box and do things that have never been done before and use their skills in a new way. And when I see stuff like that, to me, I love that stuff too.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is there one form of art that affects you professionally and another form that affects you personally?
Mm. So I would say that professionally, photography is a big one. My best friend, another best friend that lives here in Canada, though she actually lives in London. She's a photographer, and she was a gymnast growing up, and she did a degree in kinesiology, and then became a photographer. And I've really learned a lot about her in terms of like movement and posing. So being on the sort of looking at photography, but then also being on the other side, because I'm in front of the camera a lot as well. And having an appreciation of how photography works has really helped me professionally, even in terms of things like how you pose, because I learned that sometimes you take a photo and you look at it back and you look totally different. So learning, different angles and things like that, it's really from a personal perspective, especially when I think about photos that I use for marketing or for social media. Learning the photography and the art of photography has been really beneficial for me professionally. And then personally, I think music is something. I grew up, I never played any instruments. I never really had an appreciation for music. And when I was in school, so I went to Western for 11 years and I studied health science. And my last 4 years, when I was working on my PhD, I would have to spend hours at the library or at home, like writing my papers, working on my dissertation, analyzing data. And it was a really tedious, boring thing. And it sometimes would make me like, it was such a struggle to get myself to do the work that I needed to do in order to accomplish the goal that I had. And personally, I really would struggle with that sometimes because it's hard. to spend so much time when your friends are out doing really fun things and you're stuck at home working on your schoolwork. And music to me was my saving grace. It was something that allowed me to find joy in something I didn't love doing as much. And it brought to me a sense of calm and peace. And it brought this element of pleasure and feeling good and enjoying myself in a time when I wasn't necessarily really loving what I was doing. It was sort of the thing that really helped me to not only get through, but it almost inspired me, and it made my work better. And I think that that's been such a gift for me, the music for sure.
Yeah, and it's amazing how art can change your perspective on something.
Yeah, or even your mood. Even when I notice, like if I put on very calm, tranquil piano music towards the end of the day, it would be very different than maybe in the morning I put on, really fast or upbeat music. Two of my favorite Spotify playlists that I listen to all the time, one's called The Most Beautiful Songs in the World, and one's called Music for Concentration. And I would listen to the most beautiful song one more early in the morning, and then in the evening more like Music for Concentration. So some of those playlists are like my go-to, because even just the different tempos and the pacing and the instruments can really change your mood and how you're feeling too.
Yeah, definitely. So, and my certification project is all about giving back to the community, specifically to those with disabilities and illnesses. So, how do you give back to the community?
Mm. I first of all, I really, I celebrate you for what you're doing and exploring what you're passionate about, but then also taking it one step further and really giving back. And I think that especially now more than ever, we don't live in these little bubbles by ourselves, and we really are in this global community. And so that's something that's always been really important to me as well. And I think that one of the things about giving back that's beautiful is we can each use our unique skills and gifts in different ways. And you've really tapped into art and to that, and I think that's so beautiful. And so for me, some of the skills and gifts that I use and how I give back is I do a lot of volunteer work with children's charities. And actually, in London, well, it's a Canadian charity, but in London, there's a foundation called the Sunshine Foundation that helps kids with physical disabilities. And so I've been involved with them for probably like over a decade now, in different volunteer capacities. I do a lot of volunteering at different events where, because I'm in the media and stuff, sometimes I'll do more like hosting events, like charity events, or emceeing different events. And so raising awareness for things like breast cancer, or for different children's charities and things like that. Because one of the things that's, especially in terms of happiness, when we do nice things for other people, not only do they see a benefit in terms of their happiness, but we do too. And I think sometimes it's really a beautiful thing to know that what we're doing actually extends beyond us. So there's research from Harvard that shows that our happiness extends 3 degrees from us. So when we focus on doing something nice for somebody else, they feel happy. But then the people that they meet, and then the people that they meet also feel happy. And so I think it's one of those really cool things where when you touch a life or you do something nice for somebody else, it goes beyond that. And I think that it's such a powerful thing to be able to use our gifts and our skills to help brighten other people's days or help them feel happier or make their life a little bit easier.
Yeah, definitely. Even when I was at my pop-up event and there's all these different people with disabilities and illnesses painting,
Mhm.
I felt so happy. And there was
Mm.
this one guy, he had Parkinson's disease, and he hadn't painted since high school, I think. And his hand was shaking, and as soon
Mm.
as he started painting, it started to kind of slow down. It didn't shake anymore. So he was telling me and my dad, like, this is what your event is doing to me. And
Oh.
I felt so happy.
Yeah.
And just me helping those and knowing that I'm really impacting people's lives by just doing this makes me really happy.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And then the other thing is, like, sometimes I'll go and, volunteer at an event and I'll say something to someone or whatever. And then a year later, they'll come up and like, do you remember when we did this? And so sometimes even beyond the actual being there, when you can touch a life, it can have impacts beyond just that day too, or just the painting that they're painting. We never know when we touch other people's lives, what a profound effect it can have, or who they might then help in turn, things like that. It's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, definitely. So, for those who are physically disabled, how does your happiness research relate to that?
I think sometimes, especially when we're physically challenged with things, um, we're pulled in a lot of different directions. And so when we can bring our focus, and this is it with anything, even with if you have a lot of tasks to do and you look at the difference between multitasking and focusing on one task at a time, the research shows that when you multitask, you actually get less done and you're less productive. And so sometimes when we can get out all the noise and focus on one thing, our awareness and our attention towards that can help us to really maximize and use all the gifts or the skills or the energy or the talent that we have in that one thing. Also, one of the things that I think is beautiful about art in particular is that it can get us out of our head. And, we have thousands and thousands of thoughts a day. And when our mind is racing, even from the time we wake up, then we just keep thinking about all the things we have to do later, or the things we forgot to do, or the people we need to call, or the groceries we need to get, or what we're going to make for dinner. Our mind is racing all the time. And sometimes when we sit down to paint, for example, we can let go of that monkey mind and start to find a little bit more peace. And there's research that shows that, especially when we look at things like creativity, when we can shut out the noise, that's when that comes. Even like I've read studies and I've spoken to people where when they go for a walk and they don't bring their phone, they start having all these ideas. Or people that go to bed at the end of the night and then they start having all these ideas because everything else is shut off. So sometimes art can just be that conduit, that tool to help us turn off our racing mind and really narrow in on one thing. And when we do that, that can open us up to creativity, to new ideas, to really focus and to tap into more of our nature and shut out a lot of the noise.
One of my projects is to donate a number of virtual reality headsets to the Sick Kids Hospital. So, how does virtual reality help with happiness?
First of all, my heart is smiling so much hearing that. And, truly one of the biggest joys in my life is going to Sick Kids and the work that they do at that hospital. It's just so inspiring and amazing. And they help kids and families so much. And it's just a really special place. And to be able to add innovation and things like virtual reality, I think it's just so exciting and such a gift for the kids that are there and for the families that are there. And especially, when you were touching on pain management, stuff like that, when we're in pain, especially, it can be really hard to focus on things that are good because pain is so loud. It like turns up the dial on that and turns down the dial on a lot of those other things. We can't focus necessarily. We might not find enjoyment in things that we normally do. It can be hard to even connect with people when you're in that. And so anything to dial down that signal, to turn down the noise on pain is really powerful. And when we look at what motivates, when we look at like the psychology of what motivates human behavior, people do things for two reasons. They do it to avoid pain and to produce pleasure. And out of the two, the one that's more powerful is the pain. And so when we can start to take that away, then we can start to look at the things that feel good. And for kids, especially when you're going through something, it can be very scary and they may not even understand what's going on necessarily. And so anything that we can do and that what you're doing to support them in their healing and in their journey, their health journey, it's such a beautiful gift. And the gift actually extends beyond just that treatment, because when you can turn down the volume on pain, it the residue is also really powerful. So yeah, they might, or yes, they do experience less pain during the thing because the VR is helping them. But it's also inspiring their creativity. It's a less traumatic experience for them. And sometimes those things, it's like planting a seed. And then over time, the benefits of that continue to grow, especially with children.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So how would you like people to get in touch with you?
Mm. So my website's a good hub for all my stuff, and that's my name, gillianmandich.com. So it's Gillian with a G. So it's GILLIANMANDICH. And that's a good hub. It links to all my media clips and my socials are there. All my handles are my name at Gillian Mandich, and that's a good place to find me too.
Great. Thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our time today. I told you at the beginning, this is what I was looking to most in my day, and it's just been such a joy. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Remember, if you want to find out more about this guest, please go to my show notes where I have all the links needed. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to my podcast series and help me by sharing it, leaving a rating, and a comment. I hope you join me on my next podcast. Bye for now.